live. Welcome, everybody, to another Real Talk episode. Today, joining me is Angela Thurman, Principal Manager and Director of the Thurman Group.
Thurman Co. Yeah.
Thurman Co. Of Thurman Group, Thurman Co. Well, company, Thurman. Yeah, Thurman Co. Well, welcome. Welcome today. So excited to have you on. As I said, we connected online, and I saw I saw some things your background also in women in manufacturing. I'm like, wow, I'm part of Women Electric. What's this all about? And then I know we discuss things, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're currently doing, and then how you got here?
I will happy to. Thank you, Rob. So I'm Angela Thurman. I have a program management consulting firm in Houston. I am by training an electrical engineer, and I have about 30 plus years of experience in technical program management. I've worked in primarily aerospace and telecommunications for a number of large companies as well as the US government. And I've just always enjoyed engineering and program management. And when the opportunity arose this year, I decided to launch my own consulting company. And we offer program management, contract management, and supplier management to small to medium-sized companies who probably don't have those skills in-house. And so we try to fill that gap so that they get the advantages of our expertise.
What a time today when supply chain supplier is all on the news and mainstream. A great time to get in this business because there is. I mean, the digital world, the traditional business is being obsolete and it's moving to more digital processes. How do we handle suppliers? I mean, as we know, we're in a supply chain disruption today. Everything is broken. How do we get components and materials to the right places? Production to get to the consumer or the end user. So it's dynamic, and I'm so happy we connected and to take us through this journey of yours and how you got here, and talk about a little about Thurman, the Thurman Company, Thurman Co., and how you can really how yourself and how your company really has the mission to change supplier rationalization, supplier groups, and go into companies to really, as you say, mitigate the gap. How do we mitigate the gap with technology, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's how we mitigate the gap. So, how did again? It was great. Your excitement always. I mean, as I said, your excitement for the industry, as we talked before, is amazing. It's just like myself. You're excited about what's going on, technologies. But how did you get here? Where did you start from? Did you start in engineering, or is that something that you just picked up? How did you get here?
So yeah, I started in engineering. So I've always been, I was a pretty bright kid coming up through school. And when I got to high school, it was pretty evident that I had an aptitude for math and science. And when I was 16, a deacon in my church happened to be the chairman of the engineering division of a local college, a private school in my hometown. And so he gave me a subscription to Woman Engineer magazine as an encouragement to go into engineering. So I had some support and a mentor early on. And I think that is, especially in the early 80s, that was probably pretty uncommon. But with his encouragement, I decided to go to engineering school. And so I went to this very, very small private school in Arkansas. And when I graduated with a class of 6 electrical engineers. So we had very direct contact with all of our professors to the point where I can remember in my electromagnetic theory class, we covered this one topic and it just was really taking a lot of time and no one was getting it. And the prof said, we need to move on, but clearly we need some extra help. So everybody come over to my house for dinner and we'll just do a bunch of practice problems until everyone's really got this topic. And so then we did. And that's just the way it was.
Were you the only? I would say, just like you said, diversity. There was not that much diversity. So were you the only woman in the class?
uh, I was the only woman in electrical. There was one my
Yeah.
yeah, my best friend from high school was the only woman in mechanical.
Oh, really? So okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I guess diversity in engineering wasn't so big, back then for, and it's growing, but as we know, we're still
yeah,
limited in that. It's exciting. I just want to say, I was like, how are you? Because you feel like, again, you're surrounded with, as I said back then, was like the boys, and you're in college, or it's like,
yeah,
it's all. How do you, how do you get around to carry your weight sometimes, right? Because it gets kind of intimidating.
yeah. So
Yeah.
when I graduated, my first job then was with NASA Lewis, which is now NASA Glenn in Cleveland.
Right.
And there were times when I'd go into a department meeting and it'd be me and 58 men. And I was 23. And,
Wow.
so and it was just like that. And I was managing a particular design, a particular product. So,
Okay.
load converter designs for the space station. And my job was to monitor, to be the project manager for particular vendors who were contributing to these designs. So Westinghouse and TRW. And here I was in my very early 20s. This is my very first job. And I would be, my job required me to, tell these men who had been electrical engineers at Westinghouse or TRW for 20 or 30 years, you're behind schedule and you're over budget and you're late on these deliveries, and we need to get together and rally around and pick up the pace and things like that. And it was a little bit uncomfortable, but I did it, and eventually did it well. And
Yeah, you
and
persevered. You
I
persevered, you thrived,
did. And
and you took that energy, and yeah, it's awesome.
I loved it. I mean, I knew from the beginning that that's what I wanted to do.
Well, that's what, those are stories of, how did you get here? What did you do? How did you get in electronics? 'Cause, of course, the industry in electronics, engineering, supply chain, hardware, especially the hardware side,
Yes.
it's a small network. It's not
Hmm.
so many people. And today, especially engineering, everybody talks about software, but a
Yeah.
lot of people are forgetting about the hardware. But now, I mean, because of the last 2 years supply, everybody realized there's hardware now in these devices that we can't get, and there's engineers that design them onto these boards or into these projects. So yeah, again, we're at the forefront, which is exciting,
Yes. Yes.
and it's exciting for you. So take me through that. So you worked on that for space station. That must have been really exciting for you too.
Oh
Going from
yeah, yeah.
working on a project for was a converter. You're a power
Load
converter for
load,
space.
load
Load
converters.
converter.
So yeah, a switching
Yeah,
power supply, basically a
yeah,
big
yeah.
switching power supply.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, you think about it. So the space station is in space and it's got these large solar arrays. So that's DC power, and then the um, the living modules it's themselves. Um, we thought they were going to be AC, but then something changed, and so they're
Okay,
DC as well. But
okay,
the transportation between is AC. So it's
okay.
converted to AC and then converted back to DC.
To DC. Okay.
Yeah.
Through the
So
power, and what was the, I mean, I'm gonna say, what was the type of power out? What was the how much power was going
just
through
like
it?
an airplane, so 440.
440. Okay.
Mhm.
So and these were, I mean, I got the back then that the mill grade aero in the power to go into space station. I mean, it's fascinating that you set up. So what was, I mean, when was the first project that your project actually went to the space station? What year? I mean, what time was that? Where was it express
Years
for you?
and
Like,
years and years
yeah.
after I left.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was after your time.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so I just wanted to know how from that point on. Then, so where did you go from there? From the next step, what was your next journey
So
for your career?
so there were some family crisis, and I needed to leave Ohio and move to Oklahoma to help my family. And so after being at NASA for 3 years, that's what I did.
Mhm.
And so I moved to Northeast Oklahoma, very small town. And I had an internship at this company called Eagle Pitcher. And they're actually a vast conglomerate, but I worked at a small company called the Specialty Materials Division.
Mhm.
And because I had worked there for the summer before I went to NASA, I had a relationship with the plant manager. And I called him and said, what is the job market like in Tulsa? And he said, well, you don't need to go to Tulsa. How about coming back? Because we're going to have a sales engineer job open up. And I said, okay, well, that sounds good. So I went back to Miami, Oklahoma, not Miami, Miami, Oklahoma.
No.
And I worked for this company, Eagle Pitcher, in their specialty materials division, where they manufactured germanium and silicon optical blanks.
Oh, wow.
So they had two primary products. Polycrystalline germanium and silicon for optical blanks. So they would go into night vision systems.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
LED, yeah, that's the basis of any crystal. Yeah, I got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So tanks and helicopters and personal weapons and binoculars and things like that, night vision systems. But then they had a lab, and this is where I had worked that summer, where they grew in Zerkrowski crucibles monocrystalline germanium and silicon for the semiconductor industry. So imagine a 100 kilo single crystal coming out of this giant crucible and
That's what, yeah.
and it's all a single crystal structure.
So, and then from that raw material, that was, what did they do with that after that process
They
of that raw
slice it
material?
into wafers that go to
Wafers.
semiconductor
There it
manufacturers.
is. That's what I wanted to get out. Yeah, there it is. They're going,
Yeah.
that's, again, you've had the experience not with engineering, but even in sense actually building semiconductor itself, the
Yeah.
raw material, the wafers, because it goes the photolithography, the process it goes through. Wow, that's fascinating. So you understand
Yeah.
that's you probably never even thought you would be in that position.
No, and then some of the things is, so as a sales engineer, I would be asking my customers questions like, do you want this to be P type, N type?
Yeah.
What is the dopant you want?
Yeah.
All of those.
So were any of your customers the big semiconductor companies of today, or no? Or just smaller fab house or foundries, or what were they?
A lot of them were academic.
Okay.
And a lot of them, because that would be a very expensive. I mean, germanium is a pretty.
Yeah.
Germanium is actually produces more power than silicon.
Okay.
Um,
So what are the applications? Can you explain some of the applications that will be into for that power? What type of application?
Well, they eventually produced almost all of the semiconductor wafers for the Iridium program.
Okay.
So all of the geosynchronous satellites for the Iridium program. Yeah, I think they got the contract for that because they wanted germanium for those wafers.
Yeah. Well, there is, as I said, there's simple point of the components we're using today, but there's so much more higher grade raw materials that go into specific custom products.
Well, the stuff that we grew was 7 nines pure.
Oh yeah, so it's especially for a certain application product, and just say the cost. It's not scalable. It's something that you use sometimes one-offs. A project that's a one-off. That's not scalable. Putting into the consumer market. This is all high-grade industrial project based.
Right, and so or you'd have to talk about what is the dopant, what is the whether it's P type or N type. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on what that's called. So is it positive or negative is basically that. But what is the orientation? So the crystal orientation. So there's 9 different orientations. And so
That's fascinating. To me, it's fascinating because I've done my curiosity into how crystals and wafers are made through photolithography, through the process,
mhm,
how they cut them through and how small. I mean, from the nanometers of how thick they used to be to how thin they are today,
mhm.
and scale. And it's unbelievable how many again, it's like the transistors. I mean, how many
Yes,
transistors can you put onto a specific die and get more power output at the end of the day?
yes.
What more, and that's what he said. Like back, when I was a kid, it was like when the Pentium came out, for example, they were talking,
Yeah.
oh yeah, Pentium chip, like there's enough transistors to fill up a discrete football field, for example. Like, oh, that's enough. You wanted to put transistors, but today it's it's states. You can fill up states with about the transistors that are on a. Now we're getting down to 2 nanometer. They're gonna get down to very small. I think the next decade is the biggest transition for semiconductors for the
Mhm,
power output, not just because the materials we're using, because of course now the power can get more efficient with gallium nitrate, silicon carbide. They can push more power
mhm,
now in the power from the MOSFETs and the process can push more power now
mhm,
into the CPU or GPUs, which have the transistors, the
mhm.
processing, the power units, and it's fascinating, really, what's going to have, because it is a power, but it's power efficiency. How
Yes,
can you move
yes,
power
efficient.
efficiency around? Because just to say, there's a conversion, there's an
Mhm.
AC, DC, a power conversion. So from both those ends, you have to beat the less loss
Yes,
rate
yes.
and also heat. The heat is a big thing too. So I'm not I didn't study to be an engineer, but I know the basics of the processes. I've read about it, I studied it off. I just say I've used YouTube to really educate me much more, because there's a
Yes.
lot of people don't know, as a YouTube education. I have YouTube education on a lot of subjects,
Mhm,
but there's a lot of practical knowledge that you can learn that process and to
mhm.
apply it. So it's fascinating. I had no idea you were into you. That was one of your, as I said, one of the things in your career was dealing with the raw materials of silicon, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
fascinating.
we grew indium arsenide and gallium arsenide,
Yeah.
um, also, but it was mostly germanium and silicon. And so after working there for 3 years, I could not say the flower geranium
Germanium.
because every day I was like germanium, germanium.
Germanium. So after that, when did you? Is that so? Take us a little to the next step. You went to Rockwell at that one point. You went to Collins, correct? Is that when
Oh,
did
that
you
was
go?
many years later. So I had
Oh,
in the interim, I had a
yeah.
telecommunications career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
So you're
I
in
my
engineering
yeah.
side too?
Yes. So my master's degree is in telecommunications management,
Mhm.
and so yep, I worked as a planner, I worked as an engineer, I worked as the supervisor of technical contracts.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've done everything from Erlang calculations on how many voice channels do I need to service a
Yeah.
particular area of the country to, you know, scheduling the deployment of the communications equipment into a particular region, whether that's cellular equipment or the fiber optic backbone equipment.
So back then, what was it you were doing, like from the base stations? What type of frequency were you working when you're working? What frequencies you're working with at that point? The data transfers.
Um,
Uh,
that was that was old fashioned CDMA.
CDMA. Good. Well, those were the first, because people. I mean, CDMA were probably the new first phones, the cell phones, as you would say, the CDMA platform
Yeah,
back in the 90s.
yeah,
Wasn't it?
yeah,
It's early 90s.
yeah,
So in the 90s,
and
yeah. I mean,
and um, and then into the early 2000s.
okay, and then things start transforming, and
Yep,
the whole system start transforming. Well, 2000 dot-com boom changed everything. So that was the
yeah. So
big matter
yeah,
technology.
I
Yeah.
was at Sprint when they rolled out the 3G network, and so I had a lot of projects that dealt with building out a network to support 3G.
Oh wow. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's so you went to the big. I mean, that's. that transition is a lot, and it's amazing that you understand the infrastructure between the 3G. I mean, how do repeaters? How you can put repeaters and repeat with it, and then the process, and how the frequencies go, and how you can
Hmm.
pull the data and push the data, and how fast the. I mean, it was because before the CDMA, I mean, it was slow. We couldn't stream anything. There was no streaming.
No,
Everything
no,
was
no, no.
very slow.
Mm-mm.
Everything was very slow. Text, it was just text,
Hmm.
mostly an email, because I remember BlackBerry was still was famous. That
Oh,
was
I
the
still have my
BlackBerry.
BlackBerry in a drawer downstairs.
Yeah, the BlackBerry, because it was all the push technology. They had the first push technology to your phone, so your instant.
Hmm.
That was the first instant push where everything starts speeding up because your emails were instantly into your phone at your fingertips. You can roll the scroll, and I know how many people broke those balls on those phones.
Yeah, yeah.
Scroll so much. Today we're just scrolling on a screen, and our
Hmm.
so it's funny how you transition to the time where all the technology is changing, but our habits are similar. It's
Hmm.
just the technology is more advanced, but our habits through scrolling and process and everything, the habitual place that we use our hands and fingers is still the same. Even
Hmm.
typing process, and it's but now it's much more. It's faster. It's dynamic. It's
Hmm.
learning. It learns your habits. It's machine learning, as you say. It does learn your habits, and it's fascinating.
Hmm.
So from there, from Sprint, where did you go? After Sprint? Where did you end up?
Collins. Yeah.
Collins.
Collins. Mhm.
That's where the supplier side started, right?
That's where it got real.
Yeah.
That and yeah,
Real, yeah.
because through all of this, I was always involved with suppliers. So
Yeah.
even at Sprint, um, I was working with suppliers because we would have, we'd have Alcatel deploying network, and so I would be writing specs and maintaining schedules and having weekly meetings to make sure are we on schedule to have this new network equipment installed. And it would be involving Sprint personnel as well as vendor personnel, because let's say I had to um, build a facility, build a data center, and then get um, gateway equipment installed and connect it to the public network and so forth. And that might be a project that would last a year.
So you were leading. Were you so you're a project manager of that, or project leader of the whole project?
Yeah,
Was you had
yeah.
a lot of subcontracts, a lot of subcontractors around you to facilitate? Yeah, all of
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah. That's I always say because there's a lot of compliance in the aerospace and military side. So you've been involved with all that supplier management, compliance process,
Hmm.
getting the parts, and because a lot of those projects are long term, a lot of legacy, a lot of
Oh, in
the
aerospace?
yes,
Yes, definitely. In
yes.
aerospace, um, the projects can be very, very long, because if you think about how long it takes to design and test and certify a new aircraft, and then let's say it's going to be in production for 10 years, and then those aircraft could be in flight. I mean, their lifespan could be 40 years. And for all that period that they're flying, they have to be maintained, repaired, supported. And some of those products are going to have software. So they're complex products that are hardware with software. And that software is going to need regular updates. For example, there may be some sort of regulatory compliance that has to be maintained on a regular basis.
Yeah, I
And
mean there's a lot involved. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of I would say a lot of hands into a lot of baskets to go through the process.
yes,
Because again, anything that's flying in the air has a lot of compliance. Anything that's
yes.
communicating with the air has compliance. There
Hmm.
is a lot of communication and process. Anybody who's done business with aerospace and defense companies knows about compliance.
Yes.
Because you have a whole department just to deal with it. I know the packages and the process. It is not for everybody. It's not a piece of. But if you understand it, you understand the language. Again, it's a different language. You have to understand the process. You understand the people. There is a lot of layers, and
Hmm.
so you managed that, and you were so what? That was some of the things at Collins that you worked with. some of the achievements or some of the things that you really growth. Share some of those. What are the achievements you accomplished at things like Collins?
So, one of the things that always comes to mind is that I had the opportunity to spend a summer in Montreal. And there was a particular supplier. We were working on a product for a new aircraft that was being certified. And so the aircraft itself was being certified. The product had to be certified to go onto the aircraft. And because of market announcements and so forth, that this new aircraft was going to come out at a particular time, we couldn't really slip. And so there was a hard deadline we had to meet. And so I had the opportunity to work with that vendor. There were hardware certification tasks, there were software certification tasks, working with 2 different venues. And basically, I flew to Montreal every other week, came home every other week for the weekend, did laundry, went right back to Montreal. And it was great. I mean, I got to learn just a lot about the process that I hadn't known before. I got to learn a lot about testing that I hadn't known before. And just to use my project management skills to rally the team, get everyone on board, hold daily stand-ups, and say, okay, what are we doing today? And what did we accomplish yesterday? And encourage the team. And we had a really great result.
Yeah.
And that just, when I was able to report that to my leaders, it just, it just felt great. And of course, spending the summer in Montreal is not the worst thing in the world.
Well, no, I mean, overall, it's your ecosystem, people you put around. It's a different culture, but it's in Montreal, different culture. But of course, understanding different business processes, enhance your skill set, how you can use that to convey back into to your workspace, what you currently do at your current projects. So, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's people don't realize that experience is the experience of what we're exposed to and the circle we put ourselves around is really where we learn. We don't learn hands on. It's like you have to put yourself where the people are at, you have to put yourself where the projects are, and take some of these leaps of faith and projects that are different, that are harder, because you learn from that help you tune skills, wisdom, and knowledge for future information. I mean, future career-wise or challenges you do, which now brings us to the Thurman company. How did you transition from Collins? I mean, what was there that you said, okay, it's enough Collins. Now, you know what? I'm going to start my own project. I want to be able to now consult and mitigate, get into companies and help them advance their processes.
So leaving Collins wasn't really my choice. The industry as a whole, had really taken a hit due to COVID and everything else. But so I found myself needing a new job. I looked around and, I'm in Houston. It's a wonderful market. There's lots of aerospace here. But I had been working from home for over 6 years. And I really enjoy being able to work from home. I've got my 2 little dogs. And the thought of having to commute an hour each way every day just wasn't very appealing to me. And I just thought, do I really want to travel a lot anymore? Because a lot of what I had been doing in the past involved a lot of travel. So I thought about it, and I just decided I'm just going to take this leap of faith. And I'd made some really good connections, and I had assumed that because so much of my network was in aerospace and telecommunications, that's where all of my clients would come from. But oddly enough, that's not been the case. And the first two major projects that I've had have been in software, or have come from those kinds of backgrounds. So transformations and that's been really interesting and kind of a relief too, because it has reinforced for me that program management is a highly transferable skill. And while I have knowledge in that area, um, I've not worked at a software company and until now. So that was really
Well, you
kind
saw
of,
demand. You saw demand, right? You saw a need, a gap.
yes,
There was a
yes,
need, right? You
yes.
saw a need that was there, not just supplier management or supplier project management. You saw a need that companies are lacking innovative softwares and processes internally to make them more efficient. You saw, okay, I can learn this. I know engineering. I know process oriented. I
Mm-hmm,
know the basics of how software should work, and I can go in and help with my skill set, help
mm-hmm,
them manage and solve. Because people don't have on staff, a lot of people who are manufacturing or production, they don't have software people. They have basic help desk IT, but
yeah,
they don't have people that can help them build processes internally. At the end of the day, it improves efficiencies to maximize ROI
yes.
and to be much more data driven, right? So
Mm-hmm.
really, how you ventured into that? I mean, was it easy, seamless for you, or what did you see? Was it you like to work with ERP systems, or what was the processes that you got into that you really excited you?
I do like ERP systems, and I do like contracts,
Okay.
technical contracts. I have a background in that, and I did have the opportunity to do a contract review, um, and all of this has been through introductions
Mhm.
from my network, which has been key to
Good.
my success. And helping a lot of it has been helping people identify their risks, and then um, providing solutions for that risk. So, either if it's with a contract, maybe it's suggesting different verbiage, or a counter offer to what's been put on the table. And if it's a lot of the technical, uh, if it's technical contract, some of it's like, did you realize that this clause says this and this clause says that, and those two things um, don't make sense. They don't align. And
Yeah,
some,
a lot of people don't know. So you're reading the language to read between the lines to help
yes.
people understand the process. So you're very good at reading between the lines, because most people,
Yes.
like myself involved, I sometimes can't read all of them. I'm like, you know what? Is it? I read the first part. Is this good? What does it tell me? Does it get to the point? Okay, let's sign a contract, let's move forward. But there is a lot of in the between the lines that a person like you with experience, you can read between the lines and tell the client, hey, this could be an issue, or this can be a problem, or we should change this, or we ask for a revision because of this, a contract based or software you're trying to bring in, or some compliance or contract based,
Mhm.
could there could be problems, and foreseen problems could be in the future for you because you can get into certain situations, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This is what it says, but this is what could happen because of what it says. So, did you think about that? Did you think about this?
I mean, I think a lot of us are guilty of the terms and conditions and consent, and we just say acknowledge, just go, just scroll up, sign, let's go, right? We all
Yes,
do
yes.
yeah, but when it comes to business and project based, because you have clients and big business, these are all things that people like you expertise. A lot of companies don't have compliance officers, they don't have attorneys, they don't have people that can read between the lines on staff. So they do
Right.
contract it out. And now, especially in this digital world with software implementation, ERP systems, supply chain systems, they need people to come in with expertise to help them mitigate that, help them give them awareness and guide them to get their best result. Because there are You have, again, you can be the middle person. There's a company, there's say a ERP companies here. They're going to give them a contract. You become there as a consultant. Say, you know what? Let me read the contract. Like these are the things that we have to look out for because this could affect this. Because again, the client sometimes they just know what they're good at is producing a product to end product. They don't know anything about contract management. They don't know about the process. They just want to improve their system, and you can really help them process or yourself to the knowledge of understanding, make sure that the system's the right fit, the
Mhm.
contracts that the right things they're supposed to do, and deliver what they're supposed to deliver on the time within the fees or liabilities and the things that can come out. And so, yeah, that's, it's funny is because going through that myself right now. I have people read because again, I read the fine. I don't read from the line lines. I just want to say, okay, what's the product? I use it. I like it. How do we do it? What's the project timeline? When can we get it done? What's the cost? Really, that's really what I go into. And then how can it evolve? But there is contract type that says, hey, what if we need this added service? Or what if we
Mhm.
need this?
Mhm.
How much is this? Or this is not included because you didn't read the fine lines we signed, but oh, I didn't tell you in this section, clause 1, 6.2, line 3, it says that this is not included.
Right.
Yeah, right. So these are the things that we're going into, so that you can help, that you're helping your clients mitigate, right, and navigate.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What are give us some case studies of projects, or have you seen right now with the innovation of change of software? What really have your clients or what you've seen yourself really what's transitioning through supply chain?
I think in the supply chain, we've all become aware
Mhm.
in such a way that that there's risk. It's no longer where you just place the order and it comes in. And we're also aware of the fact that one of your greatest risks can be when you are married to a single source of supply. So I think that um, some of the older practices of, oh, if I get put all my volume with this supplier to get the greatest discount, that's my best practice. That has some merit, but it carries a lot of risk because if anything happens to that supplier, your entire day can be ruined. And it could be something as simple as there's a, a a weather event, or half of their people get the flu, or maybe there's a labor strike. Um, any of those things, if it drops their production for 3 or 4 days, you could be in a great deal of trouble. So that's just one example. There are a myriad of examples of why your supply chain can be at risk and why you should always be monitoring it. So if you don't have someone in your company whose job it is to monitor the supply chain, maybe that's something you should think about and either get someone to do that for you periodically, or begin to think about maybe I should bring someone in whose job it could be to do that. But that should not be the burden of the buyer. They've already got enough on their plate.
I think you
But
just nailed it and summed it up right there. You nailed it and summed it up between all the responsibilities, the pushback, management, profitability, because a lot of the things are in the world today, everything's but the bottom line. How
yes.
do we maximize our things, put all eggs in one basket, push the price down, PPV, push the price down as long as we can, get the allocation, and a lot of pressure goes on the buyer negotiate it, go through this process, and all of a sudden a natural disaster happens, an event happens, a fire happens, a freeze,
Mm-hmm.
a pandemic happens,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything goes haywire. You just explained exactly what's happening in the last 2 years. It
Mm-hmm.
just completely snapped. It didn't, it completely snapped, and nobody knew what to do because majority of people put a lot of their eggs in one basket. They didn't diversify supply chain. They didn't have multiple AVLs. put multiple items in AVL, multiple sources, even though they're buying the same manufacturer, they have different sources from different ways, allocation 30, 70, 60, 40, coming in from two different supply chains, even though pricing might not be as competitive. It might be a little bit more expensive, but the problem is you're securing your future revenue supply chain with any future disaster and preventative.
Mm-hmm.
The Japanese, the Kanban system, the Japanese process that done that. Toyota was really good at what they did back then. But again, Toyota wasn't resistant to what happened in the pandemic. Everybody's facing the same things because there's a lot of outside forces. It's not just that manufacturer anymore, not
Mm-hmm.
the chip supplier, just for example, or whoever's making whatever gadget, that supplier, because there's a lot of outside contractors.
Mm-hmm.
And some of there's substrates, there's wafers, there's packaging houses, OSET houses, there's a lot of processes because companies now have really contracted everything out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not vertical integrated as we used to be. Everything's contracted out. So you might be the OEM, but there is probably 10 to 15 contractors that are in the supply to make that one product. And if
Yes.
one of those breaks, or if all of them break at the same time, then you got to, these are things that are happening, right? And that's really we're in this crisis we're in, and we're going to be in for a little while because it doesn't happen. You can't flip the switch. And that because everybody, you probably work on clients says, can you just fix this? Can we just
Yes.
Can we just fix this process? Can you just put the software in and it just does all the work for us?
Mm-hmm.
And these are the things, and it comes to not just the process, the culture.
Yes.
Like the old traditional, the culture of the management from not in the culture, and getting rid of those old traditional ways that
mm-hmm.
are effective and inefficient to today's fast moving, very highly efficient and highly dynamic world we live in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's but yeah, that's why you're facing it. You're seeing clients, just like what's going on. Everybody's crying. How can you fix this? So that these are a lot of the process through ERP, through digitalization. We can, but again, there has to be inputs. If there's no clean inputs, you can't get outputs. And if systems can't talk to each other, then you're just back to square one, where someone's taking the system from one system information, then downloading it, and then have to upload to another system. There's too many points and that creates, because at that point it creates error.
Yes.
You create error, there's problem. And I know you probably have done that. It's like garbage in is garbage out. We need to streamline the systems and make not a global, but systems whatever people upgrade, that you want to be the language that it's working on, that you communicate to other systems efficiently and effectively, and not have to worry about putting some intermediary bridge that might not even work and that could break.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm not aware of an ERP system that is going to let you input an evaluation of the suppliers. You could probably rank your suppliers somehow,
yes.
But to go in and actually perform that risk analysis, I'm not aware that exists in an ERP system.
No, you're right. There's the ratings you can do, because per ISO or AS ratings, you can rate your suppliers. You have a preferred supplier vendor
list. Yes, you do.
Who you buy from. You can rate them. You have a DMR. You have the process that come into play. Between all these, you can do that. That can give you some type of rating. But the problem is, you also, per AS guidelines, you have to audit your vendors.
Yes.
You have to audit their vendors, right? Through their BCP. What's their business continuity plan? What can they, if the internet goes out, do they have a backup line? I mean, these are simple things today.
Simple things.
Simple things, but a lot of people weren't planned, and it was to share stories. Like when I traveled to Asia for the last 20 years, traveled to Asia with these international OEM or EMS companies. These companies were very forward thinking, and to be approved, they had to come on site audit you. These are multinational companies. You're in China, Southeast Asia. They had to come audit you. What's your BCP plan? What's the process you have? What's your risk analysis? What's your mismanagement? If this warehouse burns down, they audit you through this process. But there's a lot of customers that I do business with, even in the States or even Europe, that never did that. Didn't even, here's a certification. We have ISO. Okay, you're qualified. Just give us the part. But they never did I would say, a background check to know your customer, to know your vendor. Who is their vendor, to understand that, where you can see a lot of those breaks have happened into today's world, because it was on a trust system. It wasn't really on an auditing system so much. So everybody is much more, I would say, it's opened everybody's eyes that we need to audit our vendors and make sure, are we buying from somebody? Because any website can make anybody look like anything.
Yes.
what's happening behind the scenes
Mhm.
that matters in the audit process. So are you out now, are you building awareness now to your customers and telling them like, hey, it's not just you need to audit them, you need to do the process, you need to have a system checklist
Mhm.
of what they provide. Is that where you're now giving them more awareness of what they need to fix their supply chain?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
When I was at Collins, I was a subject matter expert and a leader of teams that would go out and do exactly that, audit not only our existing suppliers but potential suppliers. And there was a rating, a criteria, and a method to that. So when we were doing, say, a make versus buy analysis, that would be one of the measures that would go into that analysis.
Well, like you said, make versus buy. Should we make this or should we buy it? Yeah, that's funny. It's because you want to do it in house. Should we just make this ourselves, or yeah, it's. I haven't really heard that term before.
Oh,
It's the first
really?
time I've. Yeah,
Okay.
make versus buy. Because I think on that level too, it's different. Because most of the business we do, what I was involved was industrial and consumer or telecom, where it's higher volumes.
Hmm.
Some of the lower volume aerospace that is because you could actually do it in house because you have the knowledge or the warehouse, the capacity to build an in-house product.
Hmm.
Yeah. But overall, so how did this all lead you? So you've been through this process, man. How did now tell me a little bit about like how you got into women in manufacturing? How did that all
Oh,
come about?
okay. I'd be
How
happy
all-
to. Sure. So, it actually it's a result of one of my supplier stories because one of the suppliers that I had when I was at Collins, I got to spend quite a bit of time with, and I'm a project management professional, member of PMI and certified as a project management professional. And I was assigned to a team. I was working with a team with the supplier, and they had also assigned a PMP to the project, which was great because then we spoke the same language and we knew where we wanted to go, and that was really great. Well, time's gone by. She's no longer with that company. I'm no longer with Collins, but we have remained friends. And she uh, is a member of Women in Manufacturing for the Washington chapter, and she was going to be giving a presentation on project management. And so to uh, support her, I decided to attend the presentation. And that was my first introduction to women in manufacturing. And I thought, wow, this is really great. There's all these women um, who are in manufacturing and they're encouraging one another and supporting one another. Does something like this exist in Texas? And I found out that there was. So I joined the organization, and when an event came up the next month for Texas, then I attended that event, and one thing led to another. And when the opportunity came up for me to serve as secretary, then I took it, and it's really given me an opportunity to give back to the community, to mentor, because I've been in my career for a lot longer than some of the women I've met. And I've been able to do all kinds of fun things, things that are fun for me, a lot of data analysis and helping to create processes and things because the Texas chapter is very new. It's only a couple of years old. And so it's just been a great experience for me. And yeah, so women in manufacturing, it's called women in manufacturing, but it's really open to men and women. Um, but yeah, it's really just
So with the mission, so how many members are there right now? How many
oh
members across the nation are there?
oh nationwide.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know. Probably like I'm just hazarding a guess, but I would say 5,000, maybe something like
Wow.
that. It's
Ah,
a lot. They've been
is,
ar-
is a
they've
lot
been
of
around.
is a lot of activity happening? I mean, a lot of activity,
Oh,
monthly activity,
oh,
monthly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So every chapter has events every month. And
Okay.
because of COVID, a lot of the events are still virtual. And as a member, I can attend any of the events. So I'm in Texas, but let's say Colorado is having some sort of virtual event. I can still register and attend that event. And then
Good.
they have national events as well.
You know that the one thing they say, you got to put yourself where the people are at. You put yourself. I mean, of course, because it builds confidence, it builds an ecosystem, especially the women. Because again, at the end of the day, manufacturing, it is there's not as much diversity. So having that equality, that people that the women have, and actually, in my opinion, bring a lot more color and creativity to the process of electronics and manufacturing. Because in my opinion, men are very black and white. So sometimes we are very black and white, and we can't think of every way, the whole 360 of it, and we need another perspective. At the end of the day, that we work together with larger perspective to work together. Of course, I love how you say women like this manufacturing is all women. There could be men board members or people a part of it, but it just gives a community of like-minded women and people new or old to help each other through the process and share insights and knowledge to spread out there to really make a change in industry, to move it
Mhm,
forward. And
mhm,
that's really because it's a great career, especially again today manufacturing is exciting. Electronics, we're all electronics and driven. It's such an exciting place to be. And there needs to be more, um, awareness to bring more talent. That's the number one thing because again,
mhm,
we all say software is where everything the sexy was. We got to make manufacturing sexy again. We got to bring it back because it is now. It's very frontline
mhm.
and sexy. A lot of people, especially as I said, there's engineers, people who love certain things to solve because you're solving problems every day.
Oh, yeah.
There's solutions and you're making things better, and that's what I love because I really give back, and I love the women electronics side because it's the component side.
Mhm.
There's manufacturing as well, and that's what I love to know more. That's what, again, when I ran across your profile, number one thing is like, what manufacturing, I've never seen this before. That's where it got my curiosity to how we can coordinate it, and I love to get more involved with the manufacturing. Again, for me, it's how can we spread the awareness for the industry, how can we
Mhm.
make better, we grow together, we
Yes.
learn together, we grow together. There's no ways of hiding information. Everything is common knowledge these days. Anything you could learn on the internet, everything is there. It's just how the message changes. Same, they regurgitate the same thing, just a different messenger. And that's what people say. It is because supply chain is the same way. It just depends. The messenger can be, and sometimes the light goes off with a different messenger. The
Yes.
process, the how everything works. And it really, oh, I get it now because someone explained it a little bit different than the other person, but it's the same principles,
Mhm,
and these are a lot of things that really allow us to move forward for the exciting. Because today there's hundreds of startup companies in electronics starting every week, every day,
mhm, mhm.
coming out to change the world, revolutionize. And today, as we live off our gadgets, doing virtual podcasts, everything's from our touch of our fingertip, and we can access the whole world. And
Mhm.
it's very fascinating. And I love that your drive and determination and excitement gets me excited
I'm so
to the
glad.
process. No, it gets me excited the process of it. So really, what is your, advice, and for even for, women or men entering the field, what's your advice for them coming to the field to keep some of the insecurity to come in, and what's exciting, what drive you, what's advice do you have for them?
Well, if I could just say one more thing about women in manufacturing, one of the things that makes it so different and that I am so proud of is that women in manufacturing has a training course available that is targeted to that woman that is on the production line. And I don't think there's anything like that anywhere else. So we see training courses targeted to the middle manager that wants to rise to VP and that kind of stuff all the time. But
Yeah.
this is specifically aimed at the line operators and how do they improve their lot and learn and develop. And when that came out this fall, I was so psyched and thought, thank God somebody finally put this together. And I just can't say enough about it. And I'm so glad that Women in Manufacturing brought this
Wonderful.
out. So
No,
yay.
it's right because it gives excitement. It's like the one-on-one. How can you, and it allows because it also gives you security, a couple of people there that is it's not you're not the only one. And that's the
Yes.
number one thing, security that there was hundreds of thousands of others in the same thing that can help you through the processes
Hmm.
through manufacturing. Because there's women in manufacturing, not just in the States, they're all over the place. I mean,
All
meaning
over.
like I mean, I travel a lot of places in Europe to Asia. There's a lot of women in the industry, especially in supply chain manufacturing, procurement, in on the lines, managing the lines, managing projects. So it's not, as I said, it's not very male dominated on that side. But I think that stereotype comes around because again, I think the industry in general was more male dominated, meaning the leadership.
Hmm.
But as women are rising these days and being very evasive leaders, even I said they're dynamic, they bring different structure, and it's really showing that diversity, how we are working together and bringing the excitement to all it doesn't matter diversity, races, ages, doesn't matter. Everybody we're from, we're all for the same goal to
Definitely.
make the process, make the world better through manufacturing.
Definitely. Definitely. And as far as my outlook for the future and advice that I could give is just to just keep learning. There's so, like you were talking about YouTube, there are so many opportunities and avenues that are available to us today. Um, I was an avid reader when I was a child, and today, I still am. Um, it's not always a hardcover book, but it could be a LinkedIn learning course, or it could be a YouTube course, or um, so many companies have training available on their websites. And there are different academies that have free learning available. I think that whatever the topic is, whatever it's that sparks your interest, you can find something to keep your mind active and constantly growing. Um, and you just have to look a little bit and you'll find it. And I think that that's the thing that keeps me going.
It's your curiosity.
Curiosity,
Curiosity.
definitely.
Curiosity you lead with curiosity because that drives us. At the end of the day, I think when we stop being curious, it's the day we start aging. We're not as
Hmm.
excited, but the more, just like you said, the more you read, you read when you're younger, you read an avid reader, but now, yeah, a lot more stuff is visual, a lot more is audible. We have a lot more videos, but it's constantly learning, exercising your mind, questioning, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I can apply this, or I can. That curiosity keeps us young. It keeps us always thinking like we're still a teenager, get excited. And I say that's like why you feel young because I'm always dynamic in that aspect is because I always learn and I lead
Hmm.
by that. Every day I try to enhance myself because also I have a team. I need to lead by example. I need to come with new ideas. The more information and the more people we surround ourselves with in a room that is more influence, of more smarter people in a dynamic, because there's a lot of smart people online. If you just put
Oh
yourself
yeah.
online
Yeah.
in those forums, a lot of smart people that you can learn and take some of those things and take them in and apply them into your life, into your work, into process and keep learning. I mean, it's a nonstop. It's nonstop, and I love it. I love that because it is. It's you hit the nail on the head. It's just never stop learning.
Maybe it's just a new vocabulary word every day.
Yeah, it's a new. Yeah, it's a new. Yeah, it helped because you can always, and you give back by also spreading that awareness because when you get a conversation and learn knowledge or things happen today because of course if I go to Angela today probably a lot of your family that you talk to is like oh I supply chain issues you hear in the news I can't get a car and prices you couldn't explain what's happening
Hmm.
right
Hmm.
you could actually explain to them articulate exactly the reason that's going on. And you know what? You spread that to them and they tell someone, and you can, these are things that people today always think, what's going on? What industry? Because people, I would say, well, I'm in electronics. I think, you sell computers? Do you sell cell phones? Do you sell this? I'm like, no, I'm actually everything that goes into the cell phone, the components, the PC board. Like, what's a PC board? All these things go into that process. It's educating that, right? But but those are all the things that we're in, and this is the reasons, because there's multiple factors
Mhm.
that we're in this chaos. But again, it's leading by it, educating people, spreading the awareness, keep learning, and yeah, I love it. Well, once again, thank you so much, Angela. Thank you so much coming on here. It's been delightful having you on, learning a little story about yourself, where you came from, and how, is it the passion you have to
Oh,
make a difference.
thank you, Rob.
Yeah, it's passion you have, and I love to, stay in touch with you, and I love to learn more about women manufacturing. Something we can
Mhm.
do together in the future. Really, what I can do and give back on my say. Come in as the men diversity into the women manufacturing.
Oh, we'd love
You
to have you.
that process. But overall, well, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch. Do you have
Okay.
any last words?
I just would say anyone that's interested in women in manufacturing can just reach out to me. My email address is angela@thurmanco.com.
Yeah. And if you're watching the video, it's there. We'll put also in the sub, we'll put it also in the context when we post this. It'll all be there. So I really appreciate it again. Thank you, Angela. And I wish the best of success to you. And hopefully we can work together in the future to come, and many in the early future to come, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks. Take care. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.